Electricast.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Whether you're selling a little or a lot, Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. From the launch your online shop stage, all the way to the we just hit 1 million orders stage. No matter what stage you're in, Shopify's there to help you grow. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/special offer, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/special offer.
Why wait to see if you'll get something you like this Valentine's Day when you can go to BlueNile.com and find something you'll love? Whether you're looking to treat yourself to a little winter sparkle or show a galentine how much you appreciate them, Blue Nile offers a wide selection of high-quality designs, expert guidance, and free 30-day returns for the ultimate peace of mind. You can even design your own jewelry. Right now, save up to 50% at BlueNile.com. That's BlueNile.com.
On this episode of Missing the Point, we'll cover the front office moves made by the Boston Celtics following their elimination from the NBA playoffs at the hand of Kyrie Irving and the Brooklyn Nets. With Danny Ainge retiring and Brad Stevens becoming the new president of basketball operations, we'll take a look at the field of who could be the next head coach for the Celtics. Could a familiar name like Kevin Garnett or Sam Cassell make a return to Boston? Or could some outside-of-the-box yet deserving names like Kara Lawson or Becky Hammond take the helm? This is Missing the Point, episode 63. But it's all relative.
Welcome into Missing the Point. I'm your host, Michael Marcangelo. Today I'm joined by the real BK Bob Kelly, Broadway Joe Malkin, and DK Sizzle Dave Clarke. And today, Wednesday, June 2nd, ton of news comes out of Boston if you're a Celtics fan, and we're here to talk about it all. I mean, you wouldn't even know that there was a game last night, but today, Brad Stevens steps down as head coach of the Boston Celtics. Danny Ainge is relieved of his duties as the vice president of basketball operations. He retired, quote unquote, and Brad Stevens will be filling that role. To talk about this and everything that has been going on, and maybe the things that will go on, I will kick it over to DK Sizzle first. Dave, we've been talking about this all year, that they need a big change. Was this the change that you thought was coming?
No, I don't think any of us expected this. This came out of nowhere today. Like, there was definitely no inklings of this. Maybe you would thought a full firing, after this season, maybe would have been one of my earlier guesses before this happening. I heard about it this morning from you guys and I rolled it around in my head, and I think it's a good thing. I think that's where I came out on it. Cause I think we've talked a lot about nobody wanting to trade with Danny Ainge. And I think that's the truth. And I think you saw that last couple of free agencies. I think people are going to want to trade with Brad Stevens. He's got a nice face, and I think he can call people up and actually maybe work out some deals, because he doesn't have this reputation preceding him of fleecing every team that he comes up against. And I mean, the irony, I don't know about you guys, but the irony was not lost on me of just getting absolutely spanked by the Brooklyn Nets, having been bragging about fleecing them for the past 5 or 6 years, however long it's been. I can't remember how long it's been. And then not winning a championship in that time, and then losing to them pretty embarrassingly, and then them having like 3 Hall of Famers on their team.
Yeah.
So did we fleece them in that deal? Yeah. I mean, kind of at the time. It still counts. Jason Tatum's still on the team, and he's like the future. But yeah, I think it's a good thing overall. I think Danny Ainge, it was time.
Bobby, as someone who's been, you and I have talked on the show and off air about they need a complete restructure from top to bottom. Brad Stevens out as coach, Danny Ainge out as GM. You got what you wished for, but did you ever expect that Brad Stevens would be the GM going into next season?
No. I actually Googled this morning when I heard Danny was stepping down, GMs around the league, just so I could get an idea of who we'd be looking at. I was thinking, I can never pronounce his name, Masari from Toronto. I was thinking
Sam Presti from Oklahoma City. There was all these different guys I was looking at, and all of a sudden, the news kept trickling in, kept coming in. Brad Stevens is going to be taking over, and honestly, what it comes down to is I really think DK did hit the nail on the head. Listen, Danny Ainge has been the Boston Celtics GM since 2004. You don't see that anymore. You know what I mean? You don't see guys that are the general manager of a team for that long anymore, especially with the continued success that he's had. It's unbelievable that he's been this successful for this long. I just think it was time for a new face, a new guy in that front office.
And to be honest, I think one portion of why Brad Stevens is now the GM is because the Celtics are kind of tied to him. And I think that did have something to do with it. I also think that Brad Stevens' style of play and the way he likes to play basketball, I think could be very successful. So I'm really excited to see the kind of team he tries to put together. He has a really tough job ahead of him, but I'm really pumped to see the kind of team he tries to put together. Is it a risk? 100%. But it almost reminds me of like a Theo Epstein type GM move, because it's like this young guy, he thinks outside the box. He knows basketball better than anyone else. So let's see what he can do. You know what I mean? Like, I don't hate it. It's definitely a reach. Definitely not what I expected. At the end of the day, I'm just happy we're moving forward to a new era of Celtics basketball, because I'm done with this last 5 years.
And Joe, you've been someone on the show that, obviously you have your opinions on like what you think should happen, but it's always been like, let's wait and see. Right. And today there's I can't imagine that you were waiting to see this. So what were your initial reactions when you saw the news?
It's so interesting because this is where, the world is still such a small place, even in terms of sports, because Dave's like, oh, I never saw this coming. This was kind of floated out there by some smaller sources, but it was still a surprise. So I'm gonna kind of err on the side of caution here, and I don't want to blow up Dave's spot, because he's absolutely right. Like, this was not expected. And as you guys are talking and going through this, it's so interesting because I was always under the impression that there was some kind of a rift somewhere in the organization, and I always thought it was between Danny and Brad. And what I mean by that is Brad has his style and Danny has his, and Danny would often, as Mike says, lay his speaker of the house dick on the table and make the decisions that he wanted to make, and basically told Brad, deal with it. This is what you have. I think the end, and I hate to bring him up because you guys know he lives in my head rent free. The end of the Danny Ainge era began the day that he traded for Kyrie Irving. That's my personal opinion. I believe that that's what happened, because I believe that Kyrie Irving had an effect on the young guys on this roster. And that's where a lot of I don't want to say that Brad Stevens lost this team, but I think that that's where a lot of he's not a superstar head coach really came to the forefront, when guys didn't really seem to want to play for him, but never came out and said it. So when this happens, Danny, like Bobby said, Danny's been here since 2004 as the general manager. With Doc Rivers, he was an incredible GM. When Brad Stevens first got here, above average. The last 2 years, below average. And sometimes in a relationship, we've talked about this before, sometimes it just has to end. And this was the point where it needed to end. The part I was surprised about is the same part that Bobby's surprised about, that Brad Stevens was named president of basketball operations. Maybe I just don't want to accept it, because I really wanted to see Brad Stevens put on both hats. I really wanted to see him recruit and draft and sign the free agents that he wanted and build his team a la Bill Belichick. And the reason why I think, Bobby, he's going to be really good in this GM role, to kind of parlay off of what you said, he's going to be good because he's a recruiter. He turned Butler into I don't want to say a national powerhouse, but he put them on the national stage for multiple years, for a good period of time in the realm of college basketball. He put Butler on the map, and he did a great job at that. So he's a recruiter. He's a talent evaluator. And the nice thing about college is you don't have to have the best players in order to be successful. We've seen that in the past. That's one of those sports where if you can get the right chemistry and the right flow and the right players, you can do well. But this is going to be a great role for him. It's kind of weird because you think of a coach stepping away at such a young age, stepping away from being a coach. So how long is it going to happen? Is he going to be the GM of the Boston Celtics for 17 years, as long as Danny was? I don't know. But this was such a surprise. I'm happy with the decision because something needed to happen. And I think this is the most civil way to do it. I think it makes the most sense. And I think at the end of the day, everybody's going to be happy.
For Danny Ainge's body of work, right? I think before we talk about like all the huge impact that today had, I think you need to look back at it, right? 18 seasons as the GM of the Boston Celtics, 15 playoff appearances, 7 Eastern Conference Finals, 2 final appearances, and a championship. So when you take that, and he did swindle the Nets, right? We get that, but I think the jury's actually still out on who won, or like what happened after that, because really we have not won a championship since then.
The jury's not out anymore. They just smoked us.
Yeah.
I don't know if those are connected, though. I still think we fleeced them, guys.
We fleeced them, but we fleeced them with draft picks. We fleeced them with draft picks, and most of those draft picks we drafted terribly.
But the thing is like we traded 3 washed up guys for literally our 2 cornerstones of our franchise going forward right now. So yes, the Nets are better than us right now, but I just don't see the connection to the trade.
Well, I can explain. I'll tell you exactly the connection to the trade. The Brooklyn Nets took bad contracts off us for aging stars. We went and built a team around younger guys. That the contract space eventually went away when all those guys retired, as they knew they were going to. They used that contract space and the kind of brand that developed in Brooklyn, because like they are kind of cool. You know what I mean? Like there is a sort of like a cool hip hop thing about them existing as a Brooklyn team. They're a lot cooler than the New Jersey Nets were, I'll tell you that much. And like just as a franchise, and like Jay-Z's involved, and it's like, yeah, let's go play there. You can go play in New York without having to play for the Knicks. And the Knicks are obviously, because the Knicks are run terribly, nobody wants to go there. It's exactly what happened with KD. And they had all this cap space, and they went and got superstars, and like, I don't know if we can build that way. Like, I don't know if you can criticize Danny to the point of like, you should have done something different. Cause I think I see your point there, Bobby, because it's like, you can't really do that in Boston. You're not going to get KD and Kyrie and all those guys to come play here at the same time. It's just not going to happen. So, because nobody really wants to come and play in Boston when it comes to basketball, unfortunately, like on just on brand recognition alone. And like the stuff Kyrie was saying the other night, it's not hugely off base. It's like, we don't have a great reputation for treating our players well, or like not being like dumb racist. And then of course he says that, and some moron, I know it's one person, but it's representative, some moron throws a water bottle at him. And it's like, what are you doing? Like it's just completely feeding his point. But anyway, whatever. I digress there. I just think it's like that. To draw the line, you can draw the line, and they're better earlier. You know what I mean? Like,
my question to DK originally was, when you assess Danny Ainge's body of work, was he a success? Was he a successful general manager of the Boston Celtics over 18 years?
Yeah, of course he was. He brought a championship.
Yeah. And so like, I know everything is always recency bias, and like everyone's always thinking about right now and like what's happening. But like everyone needs to remember what this guy actually did. Like he took a team that was one of the worst basketball teams I've ever watched in my life, traded everyone, and brought us a championship. All right. He brought us KG. He brought us Ray Allen. He brought us a championship. Then he took, but then he took that team and traded them. Right? We thought we were going to be rebuilding, but somehow this guy builds up this team that competes every single year. Yes, they ended up as like the worst 1 seed in the history of the NBA, but like all those teams exceeded expectations. Why? Because Danny put them together well. He made trades at the right time. Bringing in Isaiah Thomas was the best part of that team. And when you look back at that Kyrie trade, listen,
you have to
every single one of us does that. 100 out of 100. It was but listen, it was Jay Crowder, a washed up Isaiah Thomas, and a first round pick for one of the best point guards in the league. And he was promising he was going to stay. So it's like, yes, that did fuck us. That was the beginning of the end. But like the decisions up until 2019 is where everything fell apart, and it's just no matter what he did, it was
a couple of key draft mistakes is the thing. It's like a few key recent draft mistakes, and a little bit of a tendency to go for defensively minded guards, like one too many times. It's like when you look at the free agency now, it's like it's still pretty repairable though. It's like Marcus Smart. He drafted Marcus Smart. I love Marcus. Marcus isn't as good as I wanted him to be. This is basically the full version of Marcus Smart now. And like, he's become this, which is good, but not like what I thought maybe he could have, what his ceiling was originally. So like that changes. that, like, you know, like something changes there. Danny's had a more successful last few years, you know, the Langfords and the Grant Williamses of the world. Like, I don't know if you knew that Grant Williams was going to be as big of a bust as he was. I don't think anyone thought that. I think at the very beginning, it was like, oh, I think he's got size for the position, blah, 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 blah. Like, those are the conversations we were having. So a couple of those drafts go a little bit differently. You're looking at Danny Ainge in a different way.
Sure. And that's part of the issue, right? Is like those things are going to go that way. There's personalities that are going to clash. There's things that are going to happen. He made some questionable decisions. He didn't go out at the trade deadline this year and get a big man, which was a mistake. I think that could have helped in the long run.
I agree. And you know what? You were absolutely right about that when you said who were we going for in Indiana? What was
Miles Turner.
Yeah, we were going for Miles Turner, right? And it was like, and Joe, you actually hit the nail on the head about that, where it was like Danny's going to get greedy in that trade, and then he's gonna fuck up that Miles Turner trade and put Tristan Thompson, who had like one good game in the playoffs, on the offensive boards, but like whatever, you know what I mean? Like, if we had been able to get Miles Turner, our whole season's different, I think.
So I'm going to hijack the question here, Mike, from me, and I'm going to cut Dave off. But does Brad Stevens make that trade? You know, like let's play that game right now. Does Brad Stevens make that trade with Indiana with Gordon Hayward? Yeah. That's what marked the end of the relationship. Danny was great. To answer your question from before, Mike, that, you know, these guys really hit the nail on the head, and I'm going to revisit. He was great. He was incredible. He, like Bobby said, he brought in three of the best. He had his cornerstone piece in Paul Pierce, and I'm calling him the cornerstone because he was here. He knew Boston. He had already built a legacy here, and then he goes out and brings in these two guys that are incredible basketball players and two of the best in the league at what they do individually. They built a team around that. I mean, they brought in Rajon Rondo. Say what you want about Rondo. He was a key part of that championship.
Love Rondo. Love Rondo.
Take him or leave him. But
he's still good.
He is still good. He's consistent.
Prime Rajon Rondo was like one of the funnest players to watch ever.
Oh, absolutely. And a young Rajon Rondo with those three guys in Boston in 2008, it made for such a fun team to watch. Danny Ainge, I hate to say this when we have a friend of the show who is a former GM of the Boston Celtics, but Danny Ainge he's right up there with the top three, maybe the top two GMs all time in Boston Celtics history. He did what he needed to do in a very tough time. It's not easy to win in this league.
I agree that Danny Ainge was great. I do agree that Danny Ainge was great. And I also do agree it was time for a change. I mean, I made that point at the very start, but I do disagree with the kind of undercurrent you guys have been poking at for the show so far, which is that Brad Stevens, I even think you might have come right out and said it, Joe. Brad Stevens didn't have what he wanted here. Like, Brad Stevens' identity was stamped all over this team since he got here, basically. He got Gordon Hayward. That's the most obvious Brad Stevens pickup in the history of. That's the most directly, but like Hayward was more Stevens' guy than anyone had been anyone's guy since like Duncan and Pop, you know. So it's like, yeah, he got his people. Like, and he's been playing this position, this basketball thing. He's been, you know, basically always playing tiny men at the 5 position. And it's like, that's Brad Stevens. That's what Brad Stevens wanted to do. Danny Ainge is flexible of the kind of basketball he can play. The 2018 that he built is very, very different than it's currently constituted and how we play. And I think what you're seeing is you're going to see a lot more of the same in that sense. You know, it's not going to be a revolution. I strongly feel Danny was making his best effort to go and get the players that his head coach wanted to build the kind of basketball team that he was like able to build. And I think Brad Stevens was at fault for a lot of the stupid things that have happened in the past few years. So
I don't disagree.
Optimistic, you know?
I don't disagree, because I think that's why ultimately, as you mentioned, the undertone of this. So I want to kind of tie up that loose end of, I think that's exactly why what happened today happened. There's a reason why they're looking for a new head coach, not a new general manager. So I agree with you, DK. I 100%. There was faults. They're obviously paying him more than what Indiana was going to offer him because he didn't leave. And I think they knew that this was coming.
That was the biggest rumor of the end of the regular season. Yeah. It was Brad's going to Indiana.
Yeah.
You know, now he's the GM.
Why he didn't stay. He's obviously now making more than what Indiana was going to pay him. He's probably going to sign another extension before even he gets to 2 years left on his current 5-year deal, because he's going to, I mean, I don't know if they're going to keep him on his head coach contract anyway. I don't know how that's going to work.
No, they're definitely going to restructure his deal for sure.
But we're seeing that because they want to bring in a head coach that is going to either mesh with him better or be able to cut down the mistakes that you're talking about. I agree. I 100% agree with you. I don't like that he's leaving the head coach role, but after what you just said, I'm convinced this was absolutely 100% the right move, and I commend Wyc Grousbeck for doing it.
Yeah, when you think about Brad Stevens, so when you hear all the rumors of why he wanted to step down as head coach, just because he was just burnt out after the bubble last year and this year. Listen, this has been, if you think about Brad Stevens' 4-year stretch right now, this has been just like the most exhausting 4 years of basketball ever. You think about the year, so we go to the Eastern Conference Finals, get smoked by the Cavs. But that year, that's the year IT's sister died. Like, that team was so emotional. That team was amazing. Just because of how much emotion was behind it. The next year, all these expectations, Kyrie comes in. That shit just goes haywire. His guy Hayward breaks his ankle. You know what I mean? Like, everything just went wrong that entire season. The next year, we go to the Eastern Conference Finals again. We have to go through the bubble, COVID. Like, and then this year, to see his team not responding to him in that way. Listen, I don't know if you guys have ever been in a room where people, like, you think you're the leader and you think you can do things and people just aren't responding to you. But that is one of the most frustrating and exhausting experiences that you can go through. So I just feel like it was time for him to step down. But I think the Celtics just have this belief and love for Brad Stevens for some reason. And it is because of that basketball knowledge is what it comes down to. But, like, I don't blame him for being exhausted. It felt like the right time.
Will, his experience as a coach, as someone who's lost the room, does anybody here worry about that he's going to look for players that will be resistant to doing the things that he saw his players do to him?
No, but I think he's going to take the players that are there now that he sees as an issue and trade them. I mean, I don't think Kemba plays another minute for this team. I don't think Marcus Smart plays another minute.
Where's Kemba going to go, though? Kemba's on
Take him.
Yeah, no one's taking him. He's got the grossest contract for his output right now.
Well, we're going to have to find out what the new GM that didn't sign his original contract has to say about that.
Well, yeah, so that reminds me. So that, Joe, you said earlier the Kyrie was the downfall. To me, the downfall was the 2019 offseason where we went into that draft with 3 draft picks. We traded Matthias Thybulle, who is Marcus Smart 2.0, even better because he can actually shoot the ball sometimes, which I guess is kind of the same. So he is Marcus Smart 2.0. So we trade him to go back and pick Romeo Langford and Carson Edwards. We went into that draft with 3. That was
the grossest draft.
Yeah, it was disgusting how bad that draft was. Not only that, but we lose Kyrie. And then we do the Kemba Walker signing. And honestly, the Kemba Walker signing to me is the biggest mistake Danny made.
No, we all wanted him though.
I know, but
that was a panic signing.
Listen, it absolutely 100% was because listen, if Charlotte didn't want him, so that just tells me that Danny knew that he had to go get someone. He knew he had to get someone, and listen, now we're stuck with it. And those knee issues were very obvious at the time. You know what I mean? Like, he hasn't come from day one. Well, I guess that first season wasn't bad, but since the first playoff season, I don't know, man. It just seems like that's the biggest mistake he made as a GM. That entire offseason was the downfall.
Don't you remember the mythos of Kemba coming, where it was this it was to clear the fart in the room that was Kyrie Irving, him coming in, and he was we basically just went and got the anti-Kyrie to try to sage the locker room a little bit of his shitty energy. And I think that I was happy about it at the time. Because I think we all love Kemba because regionally he's a UConn guy. I think we were all in the prime of our lives when Kemba Walker was doing his thing at UConn, and everybody remembers that, and he was this offensive threat and he was a veteran and there was all this upside to him if he could get the injury sorted out. But I remember us having the conversation of you never want a weird injury. You never want to well, we don't have all the info on it and we're not getting all the right, because I think that the Celtics were I bet we have better medical people than Charlotte and we can figure it out. And I think that's a completely fair,
Sure.
thing to go for, And one point, just to make one point about Brad Stevens, by the way, I think his agent's really smart because I bet his agent leaked that Indiana rumor in order to they were probably already in negotiations with the Celtics, but this doesn't happen overnight. This was going on all year. Maybe Brad lost the room because he was pulled in two different directions, and they always knew the season was going to be a wash because of the currently constituted contract situations. And I'd like to add, Avery Bradley is available as a free agent this offseason.
Bring him back.
If we wanted to
Avery?
trade Marcus Smart for some actual value, because I think he actually would offer some value. I do. No, I really do. I think that there's a prevailing sense of everybody needs a Marcus Smart. But my addition to that idiom was Avery Bradley will do. Like if you want a defensive guard, you can pay Avery Bradley like $5 million, and Marcus Smart's on 50 or some shit. It's like pay Avery Bradley $5 million, and he's your lockdown 2 guard. Great. It worked out great before, so why not? And then he's just gone and devalued himself because he hasn't been playing that well. But the Brad system gets a lot out of Avery Bradley, so bring him on back. Plug him right in there, that 2 position. I know this is crazy. Bear with me. Lonzo Ball is available.
I don't want a Ball brother within 100 miles of TD Garden.
I said that same shit about LaMelo, and LaMelo is going to be the best point guard in the NBA in like 2 years.
Good for him, because I don't want him anywhere near us.
We have a Kardashian in the ranks right now. You don't notice. You know what? It doesn't matter.
It took me a while to realize that, and I forgot that Tristan Thompson was married.
Yeah, exactly. You forgot, because it doesn't matter. What matters is what happens.
All I'll tell you is you'd like him with it. So he does play the brand of basketball that Boston loves, man. If he was in Boston, I guarantee you Boston will gravitate toward him so fast because he's a defensive point guard that shoots at the right time most of the time. And also when it comes to locking down the opposing point guard, like 100% of the time, every night, you can count on him.
I also think he's a very different kind of playmaker than Kemba Walker, but I think that at Kemba Walker's current level of output, he's a better one. Because, he doesn't dribble as much. He doesn't go to the rim as much, but he's a great passer. He's a really great passer of the ball. And we need to get our wings in. We need to get our wings, and we need to facilitate them, and we need to have those 2 guys score. So I think just picture that team in your head. It's beautiful. Bradley at the 2, Marcus is gone, and then just go and get a fucking center. Just go get a center. Just go get someone who plays the fucking 5. That's good. Not Tristan Thompson. Stop trying to go it's like, here's Miles Turner and here's your Miles Turner from wish.com. It's like, there's a ton you can do in this free agency if you do the right thing, if you get the right guys in the right positions, and there's cool guys available to restructure the complete identity of this team. Maybe Brad can do it.
If I could just reset just really quickly before we start talking about what they could do this season in terms of players and coaches, I want to just ask a question about the legacy of Brad Stevens as a coach in Boston, right? So he's been here 8 years. His coaching record in the regular season is 354 and 282, right? His playoff record is 38-40. So knowing what he took over, right? Knowing what he came into and inherited, Joe, I'll start with you. What do you think the lasting legacy of Brad Stevens as a coach will be as a Boston Celtic?
It's an above average legacy. A little fun fact about the move, but before I go on, Danny Ainge was the president of basketball operations for the Boston Celtics for 18 years. He was 44 when he took over the job. Brad Stevens is 44 years old. So
what's his sign?
Well, I don't know yet. I'm going to see if he likes long walks on the beach and sitting on the same side of a booth. His lasting legacy is a good one, and there's a reason why he's still here, Mike. I mean, he's obviously done enough to show the Celtics brass that he can, well, now he is the Celtics brass, right? That he can do the job. And being a general manager, as we know, Mike, as you and I know, when we, again, second time I'm going to bring up Bill Belichick, as we know, those are 2 very, very different jobs. So I think as a general manager, it'll obviously take, I think, 3 to 4 years to see what happens. But as a coach, I mean, he came in and rebuilt, and he brought us Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Marcus Smart, again, he's been serviceable. He's been a good player. We like what Marcus Smart can do. We just don't want him to huck up as many threes. I mean, as many good things as they have both done, Danny and Brad, they've both made their mistakes. Dave's right. He's probably going to be remembered for a lot of the mistakes that he did make. And that's okay, because his playoff record isn't great, but how many Eastern Conference Finals did they go to with him as head coach?
Doesn't matter. Eastern Conference, we don't count Eastern Conference Finals in Boston.
Yes, but we should though, man. We should.
We need to, because over the last 18 years, Mike brought it up with the ring and the amount of Eastern Conference Finals and Finals appearances they've made. It's not easy to do in this league. It's really not.
Listen, I can tell you one thing. I counted on the Celtics since Brad Stevens has been here and since Danny's been here to be my most consistent team that I watch. That they were my team that every single year I knew that they were going to be in content. I know that. And listen, that's why I'm separating that. I knew that they were the team that was going to do that for me because we had Brad and because we had Danny. And I knew that these guys were going to do this. That's why, like, I don't listen. This last year and a half was a fucking disaster. It was just a dumpster fire from day one. Before that, there's nothing that he did that, like, yes, I had like nitpicks here and there, but like everything he did worked like a charm for 15, 16 years. He brought us a championship. He brought us one of the most storied teams.
Mike's asking about Brad as a head coach, not Danny as a GM.
So yeah, the Celtics have made 72 conference finals under Danny Ainge in 18 years, but under Brad, I think it's been what, 4 total? 4?
Well, it's still all right. So we're talking about Brad. That's fine. Yes. So either way, same thing. He brought an underachieving team to the Eastern Conference Finals. He brought a team after Kyrie was hurt, Eastern Conference Finals. A team after Kyrie left, we had to rebuild everything, Eastern Conference Finals. Yeah, he didn't get to the NBA Finals, but why does that make him an unsuccessful head coach? That's what I would always ask.
Well, so Dave, I guess to kind of piggyback off of that, do the positives outweigh the negatives when you look back at Brad Stevens as a head coach in Boston?
I hope that when it's over, when it's all said and done, we're saying, well, he was his career in general. I hope we're saying he was a better GM than he was head coach, because we don't count Eastern Conference Finals here in Boston, in Basketball City, Boston. We just don't. It's championships or nothing. We've got more than anybody. And like, I refuse to lower the standard of this franchise.
It is tied now.
Okay, fine. It's tied, whatever. We've got more than
it's gonna stay tied though.
We've got more than literally everybody except for the Lakers. And at the end of the day, I've refused to lower the standard of the franchise in order to like rise Brad Stevens' stock up as a head coach. Did he succeed as a coach of the Celtics? No, he didn't win a championship. But I don't think that this move is terrible. Like maybe the thinking is that Brad is a great guy for a basketball culture. I could get behind that. Maybe he's got a great eye for talent. I could get behind that. Maybe he's got a great eye for basketball tactics. I could get behind that. But maybe he's not the greatest man manager, the greatest player manager in history. And maybe he's not, maybe if you get a Sam Cassell in there or Chauncey Billups, they elevate. This has to be because they think that Brad has taken Jason Tatum and to a lesser extent, Jaylen Brown to the farthest place he can take them. And because they're the franchise, like they're the franchise for the next 10 years. So that has to be the thinking, but they're probably also thinking we don't want to lose Brad Stevens and his basketball mind and the things that he can bring to the table. And Danny's about done anyway. I bet like this, Danny didn't, I'm pretty sure that Danny didn't get forced out. I think if he wanted to stay, he probably could have stayed, but we'll never know. That's just information that's never going to come out. So you try and get the best of both worlds. Now, the most crucial thing is who are you going to go get to take Jason Tatum and, again, to a slightly lesser extent, Jaylen Brown to the next level. Because at the end of the day, I always say it's like, it doesn't really matter what you put around your best players. You need your best players to be that good, And I think that if you elevate those two guys' games, and I think if you had Jaylen in that last series, like maybe we win 2, he makes the difference in one of the games. So, you start to elevate those guys. You need a Sam Cassell or some, or Chauncey Billups, one of those guys.
Before we move on to the next head coaching, I just want to give you my take. As a host, I'm not supposed to do that. I think Brad Stevens and Danny Ainge were both fired. I think that Danny Ainge, after his heart attack a couple of years ago, sure, it got a little tough. He was questioning things. But after the performance of this team and the way that he built around it, he was let go, and they realized that they had so much money tied up into Brad. Why pay him to go be a coach elsewhere? Like, why not just move him into a role? He's been pretty buddy with Danny. So I think that what we've seen here, they've both been relieved of their duties. Only one is still with the organization.
I hope that's not the case, because that's really stupid if they did it that way, because that's how you create a disgruntled workforce. If Brad Stevens wanted to still be the head coach and they're like, well, the most we'll do for you is promote you out because you get to fail up now. But that's going to be so bad for whoever they bring in as the head coach. So I really hope that's not the case.
I mean, the theory is that he's going to be picking the coach, right?
If you don't trust him to be the coach, why would you trust him to pick the coach?
Yeah, I'm with Dave on that, Mike. I can't agree with you on that part. I think Danny was relieved of his duties. I think Brad, I don't think he was relieved. I think that this was in the works, and this was a conversation that had been going on for a majority of the season. And I think Danny is really stepping away, but it's a mutual stepping away of, this is how far we've come. I think with this pairing, this is as far as we're going to go. They both offer something positive. And now, Brad, okay, you're a recruiter. You are a talent evaluator. And there's a big difference between guys that are 25, 26 than guys that are 21, 22. And I think to piggyback off Dave again, that's where he's gotten Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, is he's gotten them past the college years, and now they're full-fledged NBA players. And I think this is going to be a great move for them. But I'm with Dave, Mike. You can't relieve a guy of his duties and then sign him for GM.
I just want to say, Danny Ainge will either be an assistant GM to the Utah Jazz or a consultant for the Utah Jazz by the time that the season rolls around next year. So he's not retiring. He's not. He was relieved. I do believe that, maybe I think based on the performance in the playoffs last year against the Heat and then what they saw this year, a lot of odds were stacked against him. I get that. But we've all been saying, and we're not the only ones, every media pundit out there has been saying that Brad's lost a room, but he's still owed a ton of money. So let's try the hand at this. He's been pretty buddy with Danny. That's just I could be wrong. That's how I feel. Go ahead, Bobby.
I'm gonna meet you in the middle. I do kind of agree with you there, but I think it was more of, listen, Wick runs his team from top to bottom. He's going to do what he wants to do. And I think he brought them in a room and was just kind of like, listen, guys, we got to figure this shit out because this isn't working. And if we don't come out of here with a resolution, then no one's coming out of here. He presented them with the situation. Brad saw it. And I do kind of agree with you, not to the point where he was forced out, where they told him, listen, you can't be the coach anymore. But it was, we need to make some changes. And I do think that it has a lot to do with the money. I will agree with you there, too. I do think it has a lot to do with the money they owe to Brad Stevens, because they just gave him the extension last year.
Right.
It's at the very beginning of this extension.
We did say, we have it on good authority on this podcast, actual good authority, that from people that do know, and it's been said on this show, that if one goes, both go. And I think that played a part. I think that might have just been the only way around, if one goes, both go, was to promote Brad Stevens, make him an offer he couldn't refuse, and keep him around. Because I still think that despite the last two seasons, I think it became clear, whether it was his agent or whoever putting it out there, that he was still a desired commodity. And it would have been silly, I think, for us to trade the stock that we had for him, because there was it wasn't too long ago where they were at the All-Star game and everybody was like, oh, the general consensus here is all these players really want to play for Brad Stevens, Brad Stevens. He was the new kid on the block. I get that it's kind of the sophomore year now. He's not the hottest thing in the world anymore, but he could get a job pretty much anywhere still. Yeah. So you keep him for that reason. You keep him because he's worth something.
When you think about what you said earlier about how, you can't run an organization like that. You can't promote or fail to promote. You know what I mean? Or what was the language? Fail up. Yeah, whatever. You can't do that. I also think that you can't completely gut the organization when you're trying to keep that same culture. You're trying to keep the same team. And if both of these guys went, they just cleaned house completely. I think it sets the team back a little bit further than if they keep Brad around, bring him into the GM office, have that familiar face, have that familiar voice for Tatum and Brown for them to go to, have, input about the team, things like that. So I do think, in the end, it did come down to an organizational decision. Listen, you can't be the head coach, but we love you. We need you here. And we also owe you a lot of goddamn money.
So what do they do next? So now moving on, they're going to go full-fledged into to fill that coaching vacancy. We've seen a lot of the reports, just like the rest of you out there, that that there are reports for Jason Kidd. We've even floated the idea. We've been talking a ton about Sam Cassell. I love that pick, by the way. And there are a bunch of others. So I'm going to float my idea out there first, and that way I can let you guys discuss it. I think that, a friend of the show, so Mr. Brian Scalabrine, Abby Chin's best friend, show notes, Craig, there you go, is he thinks that Kara Lawson should be in consideration to be the next coach of the Boston Celtics. Kara Lawson was an assistant coach for the Boston Celtics in the 2019-2020 season. She's actually the one that was working with Marcus Smart to improve his shooting ability. And now she is the head coach of the Duke Blue Devils women's basketball team. So, and the reason why I tend to agree with Scal, I think he knows things as he's tapped into the organization, but also he said that not only this isn't like she's really good for a female, she commanded the floor with all of them while she was there, and they already know her, right? So you wouldn't be bringing anyone in that they don't know. So I think that's my dark horse pick. So DK, I'll go with you. Like, what type of coach do you think that they should go for, and who do you think it's going to be?
I don't think that's totally out of the realm of possibility. I could see Brad Stevens picking Kara Lawson as a head coach. I think that
Kara Lawson, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, she's really cool. I think that we have a strong enough culture in Boston to hopefully wade past the circus trick that people are going to try to say that we're doing. And I think it's important to manage the media on that pick really carefully. I don't know if it would be my choice, not because she's a woman, but because I'm so excited about the idea of Sam Cassell. If you can't tell, just because he's part of the furniture in Boston. He was here when we had a winning culture. He's been part of multiple winning cultures. He's a proven winner. He's got banner 17. He was there for that. And I think that idiots, talking heads like us, if we had a show back then, we did. I bet if we listen to the Sunday Night Sports Wrap, I bet there's multiple times where all of us are saying, yeah, Sam Cassell's basically part of the coaching staff. I know he doesn't play a ton of minutes
all the time we said it. It was literally every show.
So and it's I'm sure someone even said future head coach of the Celtics or something. I know we've had a running joke about Mike and Rayshawn's battling opinions about Doc Rivers, but Doc Rivers won us a championship, and he's a proven winner. And to come from that expression we use all the time, but I'm pretty sure that they just implanted in the Matrix coaching tree. To come from that, I'm I know it's just a funny visual. It's like coaches falling off like coconuts. Anyway, for him to come from that locker room, to come from those players, he commanded the respect of what I consider the last generation of actual NBA players that actually had something about them and wanted to win in Boston, which was obviously the Pierce, Garnett, and Allen and Rondo generation. So I think, it has to be Sam Cassell for me. Kara Lawson, I wouldn't be upset about it. I think it'd be cool. I think she's a damn good head coach, and I do think she could make the current players we have.
Can I throw out one more before I kick it over to Bobby? So for you, D, what about Becky Hammond? We're talking about coaching trees. That's from Greg Popovich.
It's kind of, to me, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other between Lawson and Hammond, because it's I think both of them come from great stock. I think I would probably lean a little bit more towards Kara Lawson in that sense because of the Duke connection. And I think I can see her taking Jason Tatum and elevating him. I can really see that happening. And the sky's the limit for Tatum at this point. You have no idea how he could just keep doing this. He scored, he took on the Brooklyn Nets 3-on-1, at least in one game, and he went completely insane. And it's at that point, I said to you guys, I'm never going to say a bad word about him ever again, because he's the truth. He's the real deal. It's been decided. I just wanted to be the one dissenting voice, but there's no reason to do it anymore because it's inarguable.
You just can't anymore. You can't.
Listen, if we're just to break the fourth wall here, listeners, we decided amongst ourselves, we had to argue about shit. So someone has to fucking be the bad guy sometimes. I'm not doing it anymore because it just sounds ridiculous at this point, But yeah, I could see him working with her. I think he's of a generation as well where it wouldn't make a difference to him consciously or subconsciously if his coach was a man or a woman. I think that our generation's a little bit like that, but people like Jason Tatum's age, who I know it's depressing, are a lot younger than us. They don't give a shit about that stuff. It doesn't affect them. He would respect her right off the bat and continue respecting her. I think maybe even more so, because it's you got to be a little bit more careful. But yeah, I think it'd be cool now that we've talked about it. I know this happens on the show all the time. When we flesh stuff out, Now it's in my imagination. I'm like, yeah, actually, it would be kind of dope.
That's like my MO, bro. That's my MO right there. That's what I do. That is literally every show. There's a moment where I'm like, I'm against that. You know what?
I'm not against it. I just like had Sam Cassell stuck in my head. I hope it's not Jason Kidd. He's not good.
Yeah. Fuck Jason Kidd.
Real quick, the best part about Becky Hammond and Kara Lawson, and I think there's a better chance of it being Becky Hammond if we're just going to sit on that side of the aisle for a second. It's more likely to be Becky Hammond because I think Kara Lawson has a lot to prove at Duke. I think she went down there after leaving the Celtics after being an NBA assistant for a year, and I think she can take that program in a really good direction. I think she's going to take her time to do that. But the best part about putting Kara Lawson and Becky Hammond into this conversation is they are qualified. Like, that's the biggest thing here is they're qualified to do this job. And I said it to you guys earlier in the Discord that I love Becky Hammond because she comes from Popovich's coaching tree, because she's been down in San Antonio learning how to handle those personalities and learning how to handle Pop's personality, not just the players. So I think
can I say one thing while you're on that subject? Just, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I was thinking about not saying this, but I'm going to say it. I hope it's not her because we're already the whitest team in basketball. And like, it's like that. Then you just got white from top to bottom. And it's like, that's a thing. Like, I'm sorry, but it is. And like, it's like already
we had a white like, middle-aged male as coach.
But we also had a white, slightly more middle-aged GM. So I think Sam Cassell. You have now talking yourself into Kara Lawson. You've now talked me into Sam Cassell.
But Kara Lawson is an African-American lady. And I think that's a different.
But I'm counting her out right now because I don't think she's going to leave Duke to come here is basically what I'm saying.
I mean, it's the best job in women's basketball.
Without a doubt. But Sam Cassell.
NBA, though. The NBA comes calling, you go.
Right. But you said it. Well, so that's the other question. And we have to go there with this topic because it's never happened before. If a woman gets a job offer to coach in the NBA as a head coach, you're absolutely right. Like you have to take it. You have to take it. You go and you succeed or you fail. You go and you do it because you are breaking barriers as much as they're qualified to do it, but you're still breaking a barrier.
Kara Lawson's amazing. I love Kara Lawson. She's literally one of my favorite women basketball players ever. Maybe one of my favorite basketball players ever. But Becky Hammond has been commanding the respect of NBA players for the last decade. Right? She's been with the Spurs for at least 24. So this girl has been in an NBA locker room for almost a decade now. So like when you talk about experience, when you talk about having the prowess to do the job, if you're gonna pick between one of those two, it's got to be Becky. Because
Bobby, as an assistant coach, she has a couple years less experience, but basically the same level of experience as Sam Cassell.
And I have something on that. I know, like Dave, she's white, but I think the fact that she's a female transcends the color.
No, it really doesn't. I think
it's still a barrier breaker.
It's a minority hire in the NBA.
But to Bobby's point, I will say, like Paul Gasol, I don't know if you guys remember this. He wrote an open letter to the NBA, and this is about Becky Hammond. I'm going to quote him. I play with some of the best players of this generation. I played under the two sharpest minds in the history of sports in Phil Jackson and Greg Popovich. And I'm telling you, Becky Hammond can coach. I'm not saying she can coach pretty well. I'm not saying she can coach enough to get by. I'm not saying she can coach almost at the level of an NBA male coach. I'm saying Becky Hammond can coach NBA basketball.
No one's denying that she's good at her job, though. The point I'm making is that you have to, because you guys have said your piece here, and I do just think this is an important point to touch on. It's like, I think when you add in all the context, the things Kyrie Irving was saying about Boston, that is a recognized thought process in the NBA. I've talked to NBA fans all over the world that think that the Boston Celtics are the shittiest fan base for racial reasons. Listen, I'm not saying we're racist because we like the Celtics. It's a nuanced point. And, you have to think through the nuances of it. When you have had white guy GMs for as long as we have, you have the best player in the history of your franchise as a white guy. Your fans are known to be a little bit racist from time to time, bussing, etc. Everything therein that lies in that stuff. And your best black player of all time saying that he felt very removed from the fan base, Bill Russell, when he played here because he didn't think that people from Boston liked him because he was a black dude. So when your front office and coaching staff in 2021, the most hyper aware of race era of all time, looks like the cast of Friends for the first 6 seasons or whatever before they brought Aisha Tyler in, it's not a good look, guys. It's just not a fucking good look. So I don't think if we were deciding, if we're sitting in the room right now and it's up to the 6 of us, thank God it isn't. Like you'd never get another championship in Boston again. But if it was, I would be pretty adamant in the boardroom that it's just not a fucking good look. And you have to factor this stuff in. You have to. It's 2021. And when you say, unfortunately, you say the girl thing supersedes the black thing. Unfortunately, I'm not saying this to you, but the entire internet's response is going to be, you don't get to make that decision because you're neither a girl nor a person of color. That's what they're going to tell you. I'm just saying it on their behalf. Okay.
The most qualified person should get the job.
We don't need to have an affirmative action argument, Mike. The idea that I'm putting across to you is to not die on that hill when it's your team. I don't want my team to die on that hill. I don't want my team to be like, we're taking a stand because the most qualified person.
But no. I just think it's very possible. Listen, you can talk about that, but it's very possible a white male gets hired for this job. So right. Like we can talk about, listen, it's not going to fit that affirmative.
I would make talk about
that. But like at the same, if they are looking to make that type of hire,
I don't think you need to be black or, bring in a black guy to understand that like, this is a hot button issue in 2021. And like, it's probably not a good idea to whitewash your brand. Like, I feel like you guys should get this.
I do, but I just think at the same time, like, listen, I want the best guy for the job, man. Like, listen,
it has to be a guy, huh? Okay, Bobby. Yeah, we see.
I want the best person for the job.
All right, but hang on a sec. Before this goes down a dark alley and we start getting hate mail,
there's nothing dark about it. It's a conversation that should be had.
No, you're absolutely right. You are 100% right, and you're 100% right with what you said, and I'm in your corner on that. And it does have to be factored in. And so, Bobby, you're right. Could be a white guy.
But do you know who the odds to be the next Celtics head coach? The number one on the market.
Well, Bobby, that's what I'm getting.
Sam Cassell, plus 300.
Jim Larinaga.
Plus 300. No, plus 300 on odds right now, Sam Cassell.
Right. Sam Cassell.
It changed. Never mind.
Those are still good odds.
But same thing to Mike. Like, best person for the job, but best person to work with Brad Stevens, best person to work with this roster. And if they hire Rick Pitino, I'm going to be.
I'm out.
If they hire Rick Pitino,
I'm a Brooklyn Nets fan. Just from that point
it's forward. Like I said the other day. It's like I said the other day when it was floated around that Matt Patricia could be the successor for Bill Belichick. I will find another team to root for if Rick Pitino is hired. I'm going to be a Mavericks fan if Rick Pitino is hired.
I'm going to become a Seattle Supersonics fan, so I'll just become a basketball atheist.
Of the two possibilities, though, it feels like Cassell and Kara Lawson are the two front runners. They fit the style that we have historically played and want to continue playing in the future, right? So,
I really love Sam Cassell.
So can I toss out another one?
Yeah.
Chauncey Billups, man.
I wouldn't mind that either.
So apparently I heard the story today where Chauncey Billups, so he had just gotten traded to a team. He told the story on a podcast, like this is a first-hand account. He got to this team, and apparently they were in a huddle on a timeout. And they were sitting there in a timeout, and they were trying to figure out the play. And the coach was like, all right, so we're going to do this, then we're just going to figure out what happened. And I guess Chauncey Billups just sat back and was like, wait, what are you going to do? And it said it again. He goes, nope, I'm fucking here now. That's not what we're doing. Here's what we're doing. This is the play. This is what you're going to do. This is what you're going to do. This is what you're going to do. And everyone in the huddle was just like, oh, okay, I guess that's what we're doing.
I love Chauncey Billups.
Right. So like he just commands this presence when he enters a locker room. And he's been doing that since he was in the league for like 3-4 years. So like this dude from the beginning of his career has been just commanding a leadership presence. Listen, he brought in an era of LeBron James, in an era of Kobe Bryant, in an era of Shaquille O'Neal. He brought a team of misfits to 2 out of 3, right? 2 out of 3 championships as the point guard. We talk about Doc Rivers. We talk about Sam Cassell. in my opinion, the only thing Chauncey's missing that Sam already has is that his assistant coach resume. I think Chauncey now has a couple of years under his belt, but I just think bringing Chauncey in here, man, considering we drafted him, like we traded him away, like everything with Chauncey, like to see him in that suit with the Celtics players behind him, pacing back and like it just.
I like Sam Cassell for that reason too, though. But I thought that Chauncey was potentially going to be one of Sam's assistants if we got Sam. Did I make that up?
No. So from the one I saw was Chauncey, KG, and I saw Pierce, but it wasn't Pierce. It was someone else. Dude, it just like
I'm sorry. Literally every name
I just
you
came
said,
everywhere.
I don't care what the combination is. Just bring them all in.
Like, let's go. That's what I mean. Like
Sam Cassell as the head coach or Kara Lawson. Listen. At this point in time,
get that culture in here. Get that KG Sam Cassell. Get that in here.
That's what we need. The one thing. So like, let's go back and be like, the guys we don't want are the Jason Kidds, the Jay Larranaga, the Lloyd Pierces, the Alvin Gentrys. Like, do not bring these dudes in here that are just the same thing over and over again. I can't do that. We can't go through this again. It needs to be that fire.
What are the odds that Brad picks someone that was not like him as a coach to be the coach because he has to mesh with him, right? So knowing like what his coaching style was, do you think that an outspoken, and by the way, like KG as a coach, I don't know how that would go, but quote Rayshawn, like KG cannot be I'm here for that.
No. Hold on.
That would be like,
we have to talk about this. Do you
see a world where KG listens to Brad Stevens?
KG's a soldier, bro. KG's in there. Like, if he looks at you and he's decided that like you're his guy to like lead him to the promised land, he will kill for you. And if he decides that he wants to come and work for Brad Stevens,
if he decides.
Yeah, well then he wouldn't take the job. You know what I mean? He's a smart guy, dude. You saying it and it just like it put the image in my head though. I was like.
Wait, so you guys have been a member of teams before. You've been a member of a team with a psychotic head coach, okay? And listen, it's fun, but it's not conducive to a winning team.
I'm not saying head coach.
As psychotic as an assistant coach, that is a whole different story.
Who says he's going to be psychotic just because he was like that on the floor? Like this is
he's a psycho.
He's crazy, bro. He's crazy. Have you listened?
Yeah, but
no, that's how he's wired.
Back to Mike's question of is Brad Stevens going to bring in someone who has a different style than him?
If Brad Stevens has enough character, and I'm answering your question, so I'm sorry to cut you off, but I am answering your question. If he has enough character to have the balls to put together a coaching staff that looks in any way like Sam Cassell, Chauncey Billups, and Kevin Garnett, like as the coaching staff, if he has if he's confident enough in himself to bring those three personalities into Boston or back into Boston in a couple of cases to head up the coaching staff, and he thinks he can like tell those motherfuckers what to do, I will have all the respect in the world for Brad Stevens because he
should.
Oh, he totally should. That coaching staff is insane.
He won't have to do that because this was where I was going to go with this. So thank you for leading me down this way to answer the question to Mike. Mike, he wants exactly that. He wants to bring in, and I'm sorry, Brad Stevens, if you're listening, don't want to speak for you, but he should want exactly that. To bring in a coaching staff, to bring in a head coach that's different than what they've had. You said it already, right? So like if you go to the cookie cutters of Jason Kidd, who's already proven that he's a failure.
He's also a piece of shit IRL.
Rick Pitino, to quote Rick Pitino is not walking through that door. It's not happening.
Thank God.
So if you bring it, are you kidding me? You're going to bring in the championship pedigree, or what does Bobby say?
Championship DNA, baby.
The championship DNA of Sam Cassell, Kevin Garnett, Chauncey Billups. You're going to bring those three guys in. Brad doesn't have to tell them what to do because Brad's going to go out and get the players because that's what Brad is now being paid to do. He's being paid to scout and bring in players. And these three guys, again, we have literally just formulated this out of little to nothing. But if that is what they bring in for a coaching staff, he doesn't have to tell them anything. He doesn't have to do anything because they're just going to do it.
Can you imagine? Like the whole stomping unlucky thing happens, and you have Sam Cassell, KG, and Chauncey Billups. He would have killed somebody.
Here's the thing, dude. Here's the thing. Nobody liked that Kyrie did that. Like the players didn't like that Kyrie did that. He shouldn't have done that shit. All right. But I don't know if we've completely fabricated this like rumor or not. I'm not like a journalist. I don't know if this was even like a possibility. Like KG would like be like, this is the first time hearing of it on this dumb missing the point show. So like these guys just made that up. I cannot get it out of my head now. And I'm going to write a letter or something. Like, just do it. It's amazing. Do you know how good Jason Tatum would be if he was a quarter as hardcore as Kevin Garnett?
He had one conversation with Kendrick Perkins. One conversation with Kendrick Perkins on the phone. And that's when Jason Tatum brought it to this level. I don't know if you guys know this, but
I think Jason Tatum wants someone to teach him how to be like that.
Brad Stevens isn't that guy to do it.
Brad Stevens is not that guy to do it.
He's too mild-mannered. So right here, Mike, we're Brad Stevens is too mild-mannered. And honestly, whether they bring in Sam Cassell, Chauncey Billups, Becky Hammond, Kara Lawson, Dave said it. The four of those people, let's just put those four people up on the pedestal right now. They're going to get more out of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown than Brad Stevens did from this point forward, because Brad Stevens is too mild-mannered. He got his brand of basketball, but that's not the brand of basketball that needs to be played in the NBA right now. Because the other night, Game 4, when Jason Tatum got teed up, those three guys, and Blake Griffin too, the big three and Blake Griffin, basically bullied Jason Tatum and the Celtics up and down the floor for the next 10 minutes before halftime.
All right, let's be a little. They did. I know, but there's extenuating circumstances. Like everybody was injured.
No, I understand, but what I'm saying is, if you bring in the culture that we're talking about with this head coach,
I agree.
That kind of thing isn't going to happen.
I agree. And also, I feel like KG would have fucked Kyrie Irving up for stepping on the logo, straight up,
dude. He said he wanted to fuck him up on Twitter. Literally, he said,
and like KG will fight too. And like, I just feel like,
first of all, I do listen. We haven't talked about any of that at all, but I do want to touch on that. Every single time I watch that, I get more and more pissed off because you know what really bothers me the most about that. Not to go down this rabbit hole, but we're already down it. He broke up with us, bro. That's what I still from day one. Like, it still blows my fucking mind.
Bobby, it's about him.
But this is about a girlfriend. So I'm gonna put this in even perspective.
He's gaslighting us.
This is a girlfriend that told you she was gonna love you till the day she died. She was gonna be your greatest ever. She was gonna bring you to the promised land. And then a year and a half left your ass, and she thinks you're the asshole. And it's like, bro, what? The fuck is wrong?
It's the Kyrie show, Bobby. It's his world, and we're just living in it.
That pissed me off so bad. And listen, you don't deserve to get a water bottle.
I'm sorry, it's his flat Earth, and we're just living in
it. That whole thing was the most disgusting thing ever, and I completely agree. If KG or even Chauncey Billups or even any of these guys are the coach of this team, that doesn't happen. And Mike, to actually answer your question after that tangent, what Brad's looking to hire, in my opinion, is a basketball mind that can match him. He's not going to hire anyone that can't sit in a room with him and talk basketball with him. If he feels like he doesn't have that same knowledge as Brad Stevens, he's not going to be your head coach. And I think he's looking for the fire along with that knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, just to put a punctuation at the end of this long sentence, it's been one hell of a day here. If you're a Boston Celtics fan, the changes that we were all talking about, that they all happened in one way or another. Brad Stevens is now your GM, your head of basketball operations. Danny Ainge is gone, so there's going to be a lot of changes to come. Listen to future episodes for us to discuss it. But for now, for DK Sizzle, Dave Clarke, the real BK, Bob Kelly, Broadway Joe Malkin, I am Michael Marcangelo saying thank you for listening to Missing the Point, and we'll talk to you later.
Electricast. Welcome to Tuning Into Sound Wellbeing, where we harmonise your mind, body and soul. I'm Amanda, your sound therapy expert.
And I'm Stephen, the curious explorer uncovering the mysteries of sound.
Together we explore vibrations, frequencies and the power of sound therapy and tuning forks.
Discover ancient wisdom, reduce stress and tune into a healthier life. Subscribe to Tuning Into Sound Wellbeing today.
Welcome, explorers of the human experience. This is Let's Talk Soul, and I'm your host, Claudia Monticelli. We're not afraid of the great mysteries of existence here. Soul versus consciousness, we're on it. Spirituality versus science, we've got that covered too. Join us in navigating these profound topics with wisdom, curiosity, and a dash of audacity. Whether you're a spiritual veteran or just starting your journey, Let's Talk Soul is your passport to the unknown. Let's Talk Soul, diving into the depths of the human spirit. Subscribe now wherever you get your podcasts.
Electricast.